Good morning, everyone. It's Monday. It's Memorial Day. It's the 31st of May. It really feels like a Sunday today. It's the first day we've seen the sun come out for 3 days. It's been raining torrentially, and really reminds me of being in Manchester. Over the last month, while Debbie's been away in Tucson, really done a lot of reading. I wanted to share with you some of the books that I've read, which most of them I found to be very interesting. I don't think that they're necessarily ones that you might want to pick up, but you might find them interesting. As you know, in this house, you don't have to go very far before you find books, especially interesting ones. And the first book I read, I just picked up. I don't know who bought it. It's called Call the Midwife. It's a true story of a woman who became a midwife. She went to work in a centre run by nuns in the East End of London in the 1950s. It's very evocative of life in London, in the poor part of London in the 1950s. That was a fairly easy read. Once I started reading about England, I bought this book. This isn't a book that I think many people have read or will read or should read. It's a fascinating book. It's by Bill Williams, who was a professor of history at Manchester University, but took a tremendous interest in the Jewish community, not being Jewish himself. Was one of the co-founders of the Manchester Jewish Museum. And this book chronicles the generation of Jews in Manchester, one generation ahead of my father. There's a lot of overlaps. For example, this gentleman, Sir Sidney Hamburger, became a very successful businessman. He became mayor of Salford, very active in the Jewish Representative Council, following a great lineage of Jewish leaders in Manchester, very, very passionate Zionist. Overlaps, he lived in Cavendish Road, where, as you know, we have relatives, but from a different generation, a different kind of social milieu that my parents lived in. But it was a good read because a lot of the things overlapped my life and my parents' life, and tells you a lot about what it means to be, or what it meant to be brought up Jewish in Manchester. As a counterpoint to this, you have the novels of Howard Jacobson. Howard Jacobson was raised not 2 miles away from all the events that were going on here, and yet his perspective on the Jewish world is really 180 degrees different than what you see here. Having started reading that, reading about Manchester, I also bought this book. It's by Bill Williams. Bill Williams' major book on the history of Jews as Manchester is very hard to read and inaccessible. And this is a picture book. And it's very interesting. It again tells you about the different waves of immigration into Manchester. Interestingly, in this other book, there are not too many pictures. However, there's one picture here, which I can find, of Sir Sidney Hamburger being inducted as Mayor of Salford. And you probably won't be able to see this, but here is a picture taken at the Higher Crumpsall Shul, and the choir is there, and there at the back There at the back singing Uncle Sol there, Uncle Sol and Uncle Reuben. After that, I went down to the basement. I found this book. I think it's Nat's book, A Thousand Splendid Suns. It's a novel about life in Afghanistan. Very, very sad. It's beautifully written. It was a very fast read because you don't want to miss the story, but so sad with people dying and people having a very difficult life for no reason of their own. I needed some uplift after that. And so I picked up this book, which we've got. Debbie and I met Rabbi Pliskin when we went to Aish in Jerusalem. We went really just to get some water on a hot day. We went in there because the hotel was too busy. And the administrator of the Aish Center said, please, just go in and sit on any class you like. There's one right there. And we went in, we didn't know who was doing the class. There was a rabbi teaching, mainly students and ballet tshuva, with a unbelievable twinkle in his eye. And that was Rabbi Zelig Pliskin. When I read his books the first time, each one, I don't know, I sort of get angry because he advocates things to do that I would find difficult or trite. Here, this book is all about positive affirmations. And I find that reading his books twice, when I read them the second time, I find a lot more sense in them. And I hope that some of the things in here are aspirational. As a counterpoint to that, this book, Morality by Jonathan Sacks, has been sitting on my side table. I haven't started reading it. This is Jonathan Sacks's last book. I'm a big fan of the writing of Jonathan Sacks. But, you know, the world we live in is rough and tough and not a good time for Jews at the moment. And, you know, reading the works of Jeremiah are difficult at any time. This is not an easy book, a pleasant book to read, but it's a reminder of how much Jonathan Sacks made a difference, made to so many of us in Anglo Jewry and in modern Orthodox Jewry in general, the way he spoke. On the English theme, I also bought this book. This is Jewish Treasures from Oxford Libraries. This is about non-Jewish collectors of Jewish works. Surprisingly, when I was at Oxford, I never went into, I went once into the Bodleian Library. I had no reason to go there. I would go to the Radcliffe Science Library or the college library if I wanted to study. But here you've got beautiful manuscripts. You've got amazing collections of Judaica. It's a beautiful tabletop book, interestingly sponsored by, his name isn't on the front, but the whole production of this was sponsored by a businessman from Melbourne who is a collector of Jewish books, and he was able to provide funds to the Bodleian Library to have this book written by librarians. Fascinating way of looking at literature through the history and story of librarians rather than historians. No offense to David, just a different perspective. And finally, in between and slowly, I've been trying to read this book. I bought it on a trip to England quite a while ago. I got this at Tesco with a bunch of other books. It's a hard read. Any book I think about war is a hard read. I'm not a big fan of this type of book, but he writes very clearly, very lucidly, and it was going on in my lifetime, but not in a way that I could comprehend. I was certainly detached from Vietnam and the whole Vietnam movement and everything else. And so it's a different perspective. So there you are. That's a lot of reading. I've had a lot of time here to do that. And if you would like to read any of these books, then just let me know. Take care.